if that spiritual authority makes you feel unsafe to actually ask the bigger, the deeper questions, or make you feel less than a Christian, or makes you feel like that you don't have faith because you're just asking the question, those are bad systems to be a part of. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Whiskey and the Writings. I am your host, Joe, and this is a channel for the skeptic, the seeker, those who still believe, but maybe just not like they used to. A place where you can ask questions, wrestle with faith in a safe place. And that's what we're about here, Whiskey and the Writings, and I am glad you're here. Today, we are drinking something brand new. I've never had this before. It's the first time I ever have even seen it. I saw it on the shelf recently at our liquor store. And of course, you know me, I like to look for a bottled in bond. And so I saw this, I saw the label bottled in bond. And so I picked it up and I'm really excited to try this. This is Old Pepper Distillery. This is a bourbon, just a straight bourbon, not blended, bottled in bond. So you got the 100 proof, you've got the aging, you've got the particular rules to be labeled bottled in bond. We've gone over that in other episodes, but so I have no idea. This is, the branding on it, super legit. Lexington, Kentucky is where is this from? I have a friend that's in school in Kentucky right now. So Z, if you're watching, what's up? Drinking something Kentucky, thinking of you. All that to be said, I am going to open this up and we're going to test this out. I should cut that, huh? Oh my gosh, I just broke the cork. I've never done that before. Dude, I just broke the cork. Shoot. Hang tight. I gotta go get my bottle opener. Oh, hold on, I'll be back. Okay. Let's see how this works. Dude, this is live. We're live. We're not live, but I'm not editing this. I'm just going to I don't know how I'm going to seal this. I don't have, I'm going to have to find something to seal this up. I can't believe I have never done that before. That is wild. Okay, well, there's that. Oh yeah, you can definitely smell the 100 proof. It's got some good char flavor to it. Pour just a little bit in there. Okay, what do we got here? Caramel, smelling the caramel. It's got some sweetness to it. Doesn't set the nose on fire like some 100 proofs do. All right, here we go. Wow, that burns. Holy smokes. Okay, we're going to let that breathe. Whew, that could have been cut. We're going to set that aside for a second. Let that sucker breathe. Maybe even cut it with some water. But holy smokes. That is not a smooth bourbon. That is fiery. Anyway. All right. So I want to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get into today's episode. I want to address a couple things here. So there has been a string of commenting on Whiskey and the Writings, which I'm super thankful for. I always encourage you to post whether it's good or bad. Like, okay, you do you. But there seems to be some disconnect between me drinking whiskey on the channel in a public way and talking about things of faith. And I just want to say a couple things to that. First off is that this is a channel called Whiskey and the Writings. So right out of the gate, like whiskey's in the name. We're going to be drinking whiskey. We're going to be drinking bourbon. I've talked about this in the past, the why behind it. You can go back and find those videos. I'm not going to go into detail here. But also, you may notice that I'm not responding to these some of these comments. And the reason being is that I need you to know that I'm not here to debate. I'm not an apologist. I'm not someone who's going to just sit and argue that your way of thinking is wrong and mine's right. All I want to do here is just talk about theology. My goal isn't to convince you or to debate you into a point of view. If what I'm saying doesn't resonate with you, okay. Maybe at the very best, you're thinking about it, and you're dismissing it. Fine, you're entitled to do that. But if you're going to engage me in the comments and you're looking for a fight, you're not going to get one. And I just need you to know that right out of the gate, because I have no interest in debate and arguments. I'm not a fan of apologetics. And in fact, there are those who do it far better and are well more equipped than I am, and have channels that do that, where they will argue their certainty all day long about what they believe. And for me, I'm not about certainty. I'm about exploration. I'm about looking for the wisdom. Um, so it's just, I'm just not going to respond to those who are coming at me super hard. I might engage a little bit, but there's just going to come a point where I don't have the time nor the energy to try to debate someone in social comments. That's not what I'm about here. So if you have a genuine question and you have a genuine response to what I'm saying here, I welcome it. I might even engage with it. But I need you to know that I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to fight you. I am putting my stuff out there. So obviously I'm inviting criticism, and I'm not afraid of the criticism. Bring the criticism. But if you're expecting me to debate you, this is just not the platform to do it. And if you really want to engage in a conversation with me, email me. We'll exchange phone numbers and I'll call you and we'll talk like human beings talk, not over the internet through comments, but we'll FaceTime each other. We'll see each other. We'll be able to look at each other in the eyes. And so if you really, really want to engage with me, send me an email, whiskyinthewritings@gmail.com. And we'll start talking and we'll exchange numbers and we'll talk. And I'm happy to dialogue with you. I'm just not here to be an apologist. I'm not here to argue. I'm just here to present a way forward that might be different than what you've heard before. And for so many people who are in a space where questioning and doubt is never been safe, I'm trying to create room for that. I'm trying to create a pathway forward to say there are different ways of thinking about the text that don't put you in opposition to Christianity. And so yeah. So if you're watching this and you're ready to pounce on me with a comment because I have a glass of whiskey that I could barely down because it's super potent, and you're just afraid of all the things that I'm doing wrong and you need to tell me about it, that's fine. You can continue to do so. I'm not going to turn off my comments, but I'm not going to engage with you either because maybe this channel isn't for you. And for whatever reason, you're hanging on to this channel to just put negativity out there. Right? That's the internet, right? Welcome to the real world, but don't expect me to engage in it. So you do you, and I'll continue doing me. And if it's helpful, I'll probably take some feedback in it. Like one of our commenters asked that I put chapters into the videos so that they can skip past the alcohol and get to the topic at hand. Fair enough. Happy to do that. So you'll notice in this episode of Whisky in the Writings, we do have chapter breaks where you can skip the drinking, the introduction of the alcohol, and you can move right into the content. That's good feedback, and I'm happy to implement it. Outside of that, welcome to Whisky in the Writings. Drink responsibly, have your drink, and let's get into today's topic, which is one that is near and dear to my heart because I have lived this out for much of my adult life. And the question is that we're wrestling with, the topic that we're wrestling with today, is it okay if I don't know what I believe anymore? Is it okay if I don't know what I believe anymore? Now, at surface level, most people I talk to might say yes on some level, but this runs deeper than this. So I came across in my Substack feed someone who wrote this statement that really, really spoke to me. I really enjoyed it. I don't know who this person is on any level in the fact that we don't talk to each other. I don't know anything about them. They just showed up in my feed, and this is what it said. And let me get to that because I really want to highlight it for us. I got to pull it up on my phone here because I didn't put it in my notes down here. Aaron Salvador. Oh, no. Aaron Salvato. I hope I'm saying that right, dude. Aaron Salvato, at Aaron Salvato on Substack is where I found him. So if somehow this gets back to you, dude, what you wrote really just had an impact on me this past week. And so this is what Aaron said. And I want to read it to you because I think it's applicable to the conversation we're going to have today. This is what he said. There is a whole species of Christian wandering around America who grew up in youth group, private school, camps, Bible college, and probably once got prayed over in an afterglow service where everybody cried. These humans are now adults who cannot feel God to save their lives. More often than not, they're not rebellious, they're jet lagged. They spend their younger years living in a nonstop spiritual neon carnival, then stepped into adulthood where the lights went out and the bills and deadlines came in. Nobody tells you that faith built on camp highs cannot survive layoffs, heartbreak, and fluorescent lit workspaces without a major spiritual remodel. All of this to say, my friends, if you feel numb, you're not broken. You're adjusting to a world where it feels like Jesus is no longer shouting through the subwoofers of constant religious activity, but whispering through the mundane. Keep your ears open. He's never stopped speaking. We've just got to learn how to listen again. That's my mic drop, pen drop for us. Aaron, wow, way to put to words what so many people feel, myself included, at parts of my life. I was one of those afterglow service. Dude, that was a part of my faith tradition where we would do those things, praying at the altar. I've shared my Pentecostal background in the past. Jet lagged. Boy, these words that you used really do fit this tone and narrative that we see happening in our world today. And so I really appreciate your way of naming it. And then you're drawing people to a way forward when you say, keep your ears open. He's never stopped speaking. We just have to learn how to listen again. And so this is what we're talking about today. Is it okay if I don't know what I believe anymore? Because there's this journey that we go on where we find ourselves in new places in our lives based off of the circumstances and situations that we find ourselves in. And we begin to ask different kinds of questions. When we're younger, we have a certain type of question that fits the scenario that we're in that place of life. And as we get older, our questions change. Why? Because there are different circumstances that surround our lives, and the same answers we used to get when we were younger oftentimes feel insufficient to provide a way forward as an adult. And so this whole wrestling, first off, is normal. So if you find yourself in a place where you're someone, you're like, I just don't know if it's okay whether I believe what I used to believe anymore. Is that okay? Yes. Yes, it is. In fact, we actually see that played out in the text, in the writings that we're going to look at here in a second. But I want to encourage you with this idea of like, if you feel trapped in a religious structure that makes it unsafe for you to question, that's not a safe place to exist. If that spiritual authority makes you feel unsafe to actually ask the bigger, the deeper questions, or make you feel less than a Christian, or makes you feel like that you don't have faith because you're just asking the question, those are bad systems to be a part of. I'm just going to label that right out of the gate. Those are bad systems to be a part of. Faith that lives in certainty and orthodoxy is a dying faith. Pete Enns said it that way, and I appreciated how he said that. Faith that's rooted in certainty and orthodoxy is a faith that's dying. And what do I mean by that? Because even just by me using that word orthodoxy, if you know what that word means, you're and you live through that, you're just gonna erupt in like, but Joe, okay? So orthodoxy is what defines the line of in and out for much of like Christianity, okay? But where did that come from and how did we get there is even a bigger question of what orthodoxy is. Orthodoxy was developed over hundreds of years during a time in the faith of Christianity where there was so much divergent thought and ideas. I mean, from Gnosticism into like Arianism to these different concepts about Jesus, about who Jesus is, and the church needed to create a framework by which they said you are actually orthodox or unorthodox. Orthodox simply means the set of beliefs that one has that counts you as a part of that community. And so the church developed these orthodox beliefs, and these center around things that are actually pretty narrow in thought. Okay, so orthodoxy comes through the lens of how we see Jesus, who Jesus is, what his life, death, and resurrection meant, the role of the church. Like these are the elements that define whether or not you are, we would argue to say, are Christian. And the problem is that too often in the church, we have broadened the conversation of orthodoxy into categories that were never imagined in the first century. We have widened that, now to be orthodox, to be considered Christian, it's not simply what the earliest Christians formed as their creedal statement beliefs, but now it is also elements that include things that they just never addressed. And that's problematic. Okay, time for a quick pause. If Whiskey in the Writings has been helpful to you, there's a deeper layer of this conversation happening off of YouTube. Over on storiesoftov.com, Whiskey in the Writings has its own home. That's where I share extended reflections, behind-the-scene thoughts, and upcoming conversations that have never made it into these videos. It's also where you can sign up for our newsletter. No spam, no noise, just thoughtful writing, and a heads up on what's coming next. If you want to stay connected beyond the algorithm, head over to storiesoftov.com and sign up for the newsletter today. All right, let's get back into it. I want to encourage you with this. Curiosity, asking questions, living in the mystery and the wonder of the text and of God does not make you inherently non-Christian, or another Christian term might be heretic. If you grew up in Christian circles, you'll be familiar with that term, heretic, which is, it's like someone who is outside of the traditional belief systems of the wider Christian community. And again, I think we've made that net way too big in the sense of like, here's all the things, when it was actually pretty narrow. What made you a Christian? We've widened it too far. However, the reality that you have wonder, curiosity, questions is not something that inherently removes you from the Christian community. So I want to encourage you that if you're someone who has all the questions, but you have felt like you are on the outside of Christianity just simply because you wonder out loud, I want to encourage you, you're not alone. You're not alone. There's a lot more people like you out there, and there's a growing amount. The more that certainty becomes the bedrock of Christian communities, it will inevitably produce an outcropping of people who reject that system. because certainty can only take you so far in life. There has to be a place of wonder and curiosity that drives us forward to the mystery and the beauty and the wonder of God and the creator God of the universe. So I lay that foundation to go, if you're someone who go like, I just don't know what I believe anymore, welcome to the club. Okay. And that's actually a sign of maturity, in my opinion. That's actually a sign of growth, in my opinion. Not something that you should be afraid of, but something that you should actually embrace. And so I want to explore a story in the Bible that many of you might be familiar with if you grew up in church, but the lens by which I'm going to approach this story might be a little bit different than what you've heard before. And the story's found in 1 Kings 19. Already, if you're familiar with the story, you know what this story's about. There's this prophet named Elijah. And Elijah is kind of a major figure in what's called the Old Testament in your Bibles. He's an important figure. And so his story is told in 1 Kings, and it's a powerful story. He's a mouthpiece for God in a time when God's people were divided and there were they were moving against the way of God and what God had asked them to be and do. And so Elijah becomes the voice of God to these people to try to call people into righteousness and turning back to God. And so his story is pretty big, and he's an important story in the biblical text. We can get into that another video, but I bring him up here because there's a particular story in 1 Kings 19, and just to give you some background. So what happens is there's this guy named Ahab, and there is this his wife who are opposing Elijah. And they don't like Elijah, and they are caught up into worshiping false gods, and they're drawing people into the worship of false gods. I'm trying to 30,000 foot view this story. It's a pretty powerful story, especially if you read it back in 1 Kings 18. This whole thing, this whole climax to this story comes to the surface. But essentially what happens is that Elijah offers a challenge to these false gods, these people who are worshiping, these priests who are facilitating the worship to these false gods. He offers them a challenge, and so he gathers together all of these priests who are doing this. And he presents to them a challenge. He creates an altar, and he says, hey, look, why don't you guys take your time, cry out to your God to consume this sacrifice. And then I'll call out to my God to see if he'll consume the sacrifice, and whoever's God does it wins. Okay, so it's this brilliant story, and you get Elijah, and there's a part where all the prophets of Baal are cutting themselves, and they're dancing around the altar, and they're crying out to their God, and God's not, Baal's not responding in the story. And Elijah begins to mock them. He begins to say, oh, maybe he's using the bathroom. Maybe he's away. Like he's mocking them. And finally he says, all right, get out of the way. He drenches the altar with water, soaks it with water. Then he calls to God. God consumes it with fire. Okay. That's the story. 30,000 foot view. Great story. Read it. 1 Kings 18. It's worth the read. It's like movie style reading. It's great. But 19, there's a turn in the story. Okay, so this great, amazing miracle. Imagine if you were there and you were a worshiper of Baal, and your priests could not get your God to respond. But then Elijah, one person, calls out on the name of God, Yahweh, and God consumes the fire. The scene that you would have seen, the miraculous, these are the things in the Bible that we go, did that really happen? Because, it's crazy. It's a miracle. It's a big, crazy story miracle. And I'm not arguing whether it happened or didn't happen. What I want to point out is that I think the point of the story is much bigger than how some Christians often make this story out to be. A lot of Christians use this story to talk about the power and the might of God, how big God is compared to anything else in the world. And it's just one of those stories that gets shared around a lot in Christian circles. But what follows it is very interesting. Okay, so as the story goes in 1 Kings 19, it says this. It says, Ahab told Jezebel, so the king told his wife, that all that Elijah had done, including a detailed account of how he killed all the prophets with the sword. Jezebel sent a message to Elijah with this warning. May the gods judge me severely if by this time tomorrow I don't take your life as you did theirs. So Jezebel is furious that Elijah had killed their prophets. And so imagine the scene here, okay? Elijah calls a drought on the land. And so there's been a drought on the land. He challenges these worshipers of Baal. And then after they fail their challenge, he kills them. He calls fire down from heaven to consume the altar and the sacrifice. Crazy, miraculous stories. And yet, what happens after that, when Jezebel reaches out and says, look, I'm going to kill you. This is Elijah's response. Elijah was afraid. Elijah was afraid. Okay, let's play this out for a second. Let's do some theological imagination. That's my good friend Lindsay Cox. She used this the other day, and she didn't coin it. She told me who did. I can't remember off the top of my head. But it doesn't matter. But that concept of theological imagination, I like it. So thank you, Lindsay, for giving me that word combination. We're going to do some theological imagination here, where we're going to pretend like for a second that you're Elijah. You have been able to call on God to cause a major drought, according to the narrative in the story. You have had the ability to call down fire from heaven to consume an altar. You have had the ability, I think it's 450 prophets were there. I think it was 450. I could be wrong. There were a lot. 450 prophets were there. And Elijah has an ability to kill them. One versus 450. Okay. That's some pretty powerful abilities to call upon the name of the Lord, call upon God, and he respond. And yet, you're afraid when Jezebel threatens your life? Why are you afraid? What's going on? What makes you afraid? You have had an ability to respond by calling on God to do something, and he acts. If you have that kind of like connection, like what do you have to be afraid of, right? Wouldn't you be working with the assumption that if God is for me, who can be against me type of stuff, right? But it says he was afraid. That's powerful. It goes on to say, so he got up, fled for his life. He left his servant there while he went a day's journey into the wilderness. He went and sat down under a shrub, and he asked the Lord to take his life. Okay. You just witnessed, again, we're going to play this theological imagination out. You just witnessed God do amazing things in order to not only protect you, because imagine if it had all gone wrong, these prophets probably would have killed Elijah. You have this miraculous ability, and now you go into a deep, deep place of depression. You have been used by God. Imagine this. You have been used by God to do the incredible. And someone threatens your life, and you flee afraid. You go into the desert, into the wilderness, and you're asking God to now, God, just kill me. You're depressed. You go into a state of depression, right? So this is powerful for a lot of reasons, because oftentimes the people that we think have it all together, the Elijahs of the world, the most spiritually tuned, the people who seem to have it all figured out when it comes to God, often can find themselves in the lowest of places, just like Elijah. Okay? We all can find ourselves in places of transition. Elijah, from one moment with all the confidence in the world, to the next moment doubting everything, questioning everything, to the point where his depression is leading him to suicidal tendencies. This is the Bible, y'all. This is real stuff. This is real stuff. Let's put aside just for a second the miracles, which I'm not saying they didn't happen. I believe the recording, the account, but I believe there's something more powerful going on, that even though you can be in places of high moments in your life where God seems to be active and involved and responding to what it is that you're longing for him to respond to, and one moment you can be that, and in the next moment you can find yourself in depression and despair and even suicidal tendencies. This is where we find Elijah. So the Lord is there. This says that an angel appears. He falls asleep. An angel appears, tells him to get up and to eat, to go on. So the Lord appears to him in a very compassionate way. Get up, eat. It's time to move on. In verse 9, it says this, that he went into a cave and there he spent the night. Suddenly, the Lord's messenger came to him. Why are you here, Elijah? So God shows up to him again. They have a conversation about what's going on. And Elijah, in a place, he says this in verse 10. He answered, I've been absolutely loyal to the Lord God of heaven's armies, even though the Israelites have abandoned the covenant they made with you, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left now. They want to take my life, the Lord said. Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. Look, the Lord is ready to pass by. So the angel shows up and he's like, what are you doing in the cave? Elijah goes, I'm kind of pissed. So he goes from all the confidence in the world to being afraid, to going into depression with suicidal tendencies, to now debating with this angel in a mode of frustration where he's like, look, I've done it all. I'm the only one that's following you here. I'm the only one that's doing the right thing. Why is this happening to me? Right? You're seeing all of the emotional roller coaster of someone like Elijah. The big, important prophet Elijah is having all of these emotional longings and wrestlings and doubts and fears and concerns and all of it in these passages. And so the angel tells him, says, go, all right, go outside. I'm about to show you some things. And it says this, a very powerful wind came before the Lord, digging into the mountain and causing landslides, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the windstorm, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire, there was a soft whisper. When Elijah heard it, he covered his face with his robe and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave, and suddenly a voice asked him, why are you here, Elijah? So in this story, you see something powerful at play. And so let me just round out the story, and then I'm going to go back and make an observation. So he goes out there and he experiences these things: great mighty wind, earthquake, fire, and these big moments of what he had previously experienced God moving in. And then he gets this last experience of a soft, quiet whisper. And it was in the whisper that he recognized the voice of God. So here is the thing, okay? Up until this point, Elijah believed something about God, okay? Something that God was using him to provide these crazy miracles that take place. And now something has changed about the nature of how Elijah understands God. So let's look at it like this. A good friend of mine, Joel Florendo, and you'll get to meet him soon because I'm going to do an interview with him, and I cannot wait to have that happen. But my good friend Joel made an observation about this passage that stuck with me that I keep chewing on and dwelling on. He said, what if Elijah, in calling the drought to take place and calling fire down from heaven, was actually operating outside of what God really wanted him to do? What if those actions that Elijah took wasn't what God actually wanted Elijah to do? And that these were learning moments for Elijah to grow in. Okay, think about it. He does these big miracles, and the next moment he's afraid, he's running for his life. He had a belief in God, or in a belief in his actions being righteous, but what if they weren't? What if this story in 1 Kings 18 that we love to talk about because it's like, look how big and great God is, and that's not actually where God's at. And Elijah was actually operating out of pride and his own sense of self-righteousness versus the reality of God and his kingdom and what God's up to. Why? Because when God finally reveals himself, he's not in the big show. He's not in the fire. He's not in the earthquake. He's in the whisper. He's in just the exact opposite of what Elijah expected. So that's a profound thought, because one could ask the question like, well, why did he have the power if God didn't want it to happen? I mean, these are good questions. I just want to wrestle with for a second, that what if what Elijah believed about God needed to change? And because he had this sense of like uncertainty, it led him to places where he needed to discover the reality of what God's about. And so I just find this to be a beautiful story that seems to capture on some level this reality of, is it okay if I don't believe what I used to believe anymore? And this story, I think, captures some of the heart of the journey moving from belief to unbelief to certainty, from certainty to uncertainty. And what do we do with that? And how do we long to look for God in the midst of that? So I want to offer for you that's just my observation. 1 Kings 19, go read it and dwell and think about it and meditate on it. But what I want to offer in this as kind of a wrap up concluding thought is the reality that if you are in that place where you're moving from certainty to uncertainty, I want you to know that you're not alone, and that there are people in the Bible that had that same trajectory. And I didn't even talk about Thomas, the disciple of Jesus. I didn't talk about Peter. Those are like some of the more obvious ones. That there are plenty of people. Abraham had times of uncertainty, of wonder, of all these things. You are in good company if you still don't believe like you used to. You're in good company. My encouragement to you is that you don't stay there, that you find a way forward. And so maybe some of the videos on this channel, Whisky and the Writings, can be a place where you can go back and look and wrestle with the things that I'm saying. Not that I'm saying I'm 100% right. Like a lot of the things I'm saying, yes, it's built on some scholarship. Yes, it's built on a lot of reading that I've done and study that I've done, reflection that I've done. But it is still on some level, these are concepts and ideas that I'm fleshing out with you on this channel. But maybe it's a place for you to watch a video on Genesis and feeling the freedom to go, okay, I don't have to have it be a scientific book for it to be true. It can be something else, and that's okay. So wherever you're at, I'm asking that you move forward, and that maybe we move forward together. And if you need help with that, if you need support with that, I'm happy to walk alongside you. whiskyandthewritings@gmail.com. Reach out to me. We'll exchange numbers. We'll talk. But all that to say, if you're in a place where you're saying, is it okay if I don't know what I believe anymore? The answer is yes. And I want to encourage you that you're not alone if you're in that place, and that there is a way forward. And so keep moving on. I love what I started with earlier, with the he's never stopped speaking. We just have to learn how to listen again. So I'll end with that. Thank you for watching another episode of Whisky and the Writings. My name is Joe. Please, do the things that you do to help the channel grow. Subscribe, like, all the fun stuff. Also share it with someone if you think it's helpful or valuable. Go to our website, storiesoftov.com. You can subscribe to weekly updates through our newsletter, where you can get constant content called I'm Just Saying. It's a weekly newsletter where I share thoughts that I'm having for the week. Subscribe to that. There'll be a link to that in the show notes, so that you can get the most information on a regular basis. Thank you again for watching another episode. I can't believe I didn't take another sip of it. Dude, it was so strong. I can't believe you saw me struggle with that. But yeah, I think this probably needs to breathe a lot longer. And but hey, whatever, right? Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on Whisky and the Writings.